Hey everyone, Roxabox90 here with a Magic the Gathering financial discussion. It's going to touch a little bit into the general history of things, but mostly be about the value of the best card in Magic. And which card is that? The land card. Because lands are the most important universal card in the game, which also makes them technically the most important and the most useful of any cards in Magic. Yep, I'm saying it. Lands are more important than Jace the Mind Sculptor. Lands are more important than Tarmogoyf. Lands are more important than you name it. Lands are the thing. And when you're discussing about lands, the number one thing to think about is that they're universal, meaning throughout history, land has been the most important thing, both in human terms, in terms of the past gazillion years where humans have fought over land, owned land. Land was and is the production and place where people live. And in Magic, it's kind of the same thing. Without your basic lands, without your rare lands, you got nothing. It doesn't matter what cards you have. Without the lands, you're in trouble. So when we're talking about lands, there are basically just two types of lands. There are the lands that we call utility lands, i.e. lands that do something other than produce mana. And then there are the lands that produce or fix your mana. Fix as in gives you different colors that you need if you're running more than one color. So when we talk about utility lands, we're talking about things like Academy Ruins, which the reason that utility lands are ridiculous is because they're a reusable value that costs you nothing, really. I mean, you play an Academy Ruins, right? You play your land drop. It still adds one colorless of any mana. So yeah, it's not going to give you, if you're running a green deck, it's not going to give you your green, or if you're running a blue deck, it's not going to give you your blue. But it's going to give you a mana if you need it. But then whenever you don't need it for mana, it's untapped, instant speed effect that you can do, which is pretty ridiculous if you think about it. And Academy Ruins is not the only one. A lesser, so-called lesser, is Cabal Coffer, utility lands that don't add a mana just on their own, but I don't think anyone's going to complain. Cabal Coffers is kind of ridiculous. And those type of cards, you have the utility that add a colorless, the utility that don't, but either way, many of them see play pretty much in every single format. So when you're thinking about, which lands you want to hold on to, rare lands that offer utility often are really good, even if they're narrow. And the ones that don't add a mana can still be real powerhouses in decks that could use their abilities, such as Cabal Coffers, which is insane for mono black. It's out of this world. But most people, since a lot of the rare single lands in Standard don't often tend to be ridiculous, most people ask about shock lands, or they ask about the fast lands. I mean, these aren't check lands. Check because when they enter the battlefield, they'll come into play tapped unless you control a mountain or a forest. So these are the core set ones, and these are the Return to Ravnica, original Ravnica lands. So when people ask me, well, I don't get it. What's the big deal about these lands? You come into play, you lose 2 life. Yeah, they hit play tapped. They will hit play tapped for nothing, but then they're just a guild gate. But that's the point. The reason these lands are so important, and the reason why they're universal in value, is because they can fix mana very easily. The 2 life is by choice, meaning you put into play, it taps if you want it to. If you don't want it to, because you need it, you can get that for a very minimal cost. And the fact that for the whole game afterwards, they're also going to continue to give you what you need is fantastic. Don't forget also that we have fetch lands, which the point of fetch lands, they don't give you anything, so to speak, but they clear out your deck. They will search for a shock land and put into play for you. Or they'll search for a basic land. Or they'll search for, if you're playing in Legacy, for example, they'll search for Revised Duels. So Revised Duels don't fit in like everything else because they are the most broken lands ever. They're like a basic land, except they give you one of two colors. But then again, they're also on the reserve list, which means they're never going to be reprinted, and they are only used in 1 or 2 formats, or I guess 3 formats. So they're not seeing a lot of play. But the ones that are, shock lands, tap lands, all these different rare lands, these are the value you want to look for. If you have these, then you generally shouldn't trade it unless for a very important, very, very well used card. Don't trade these for little things because they're going to maintain value. They're used everywhere. Everyone can use them. Everyone can use playsets of them. And so they're really not something that should be traded away. You also should try to pick them up if you can. If you find people who, if you have regular cards that you're not using and you can trade towards them, I would trade towards these cards. They're a very significant investment item and definitely worthwhile. And don't forget the utility lands. They also can be incredibly important as well. But if you can lay hands, like the core set lands right now, they're probably not going to be reprinted for a little bit, and they've been reprinted for a while, so they're not that expensive. But I would try to pick up a bunch of them if possible. Shock lands as well. Always good to trade for shock lands. And don't forget, these cards, if someone tells you, oh, I want to trade for your shock lands, unless they have something you crazy need important, you should be like, okay, I'll trade you for shock lands, or I'll trade you towards other lands, such as the fetch lands. Because if you trade it for general standard stuff, you're probably going to lose out in value in the long run. That's pretty much the general discussion about lands. Let me know your thoughts about them, and if you've tried to collect sets of them, if you have your trading experiences, anything relating to rare lands that you've had in your past. So let me know in the comments section of the video as well. Check out my channel sponsors in the description of the video. And as always, Roxabox90 signing out. I'll see you guys next time.